South Africa stands to benefit from China's technical assistance, and this is to deal with the energy crisis in our country. Last week, the two countries signing a memorandum that would see the Chinese companies assisting with over 400 generators for critical facilities. Now, there have also been some agreements in areas of technology research, including human capital development. Joining us now for this conversation and to get a sense of China's interventions to deal with South Africa's energy crisis is energy expert Mohamed Madhi. Mr. Madhi, thank you very much for your time. You would have heard the President thanking his Chinese counterpart for stepping in trying to help South Africa. We are in the grips of a power crisis, and I think he made reference to this comparing the period of COVID, where, again, China stepped in to help us financially. In your view, when China sends us equipment over and above the monies, do you think that indeed we are now a step in the right direction to eliminate load shedding?
Look, I think the Chinese intervention has got some benefits, but clearly it is not, as it is being portrayed. A couple of issues. The first one is the size of the intervention, so the size of the assistance. It is minuscule compared to what is needed in the country and compared to, the kind of spend that is required in the energy space. To put this in perspective, China is promising around 500 million rand in aid and another 167 million rand in the form of different types of assistance. That is less than 1/4 of what the private sector and individuals and small businesses spend every 3 months on new renewable energy projects. So the private sector spends in the region of around 2 billion rand every quarter. And China is promising 500 plus 167 million.
Yeah.
So it's tiny. And even the 2 billion that the private sector is spending is very small compared to what the problem is in the country or what is required to solve the problem in the country. But I think the more important point, as opposed to just the numbers, is the fact that the intervention, with its advantages, is not, the primary issue that needs to be addressed. So I don't think that I would particularly be opposed to the intervention. It's good in the right context. However, we need to address the real issues that are causing the electricity crisis in this country.
Yeah.
And those issues are far more, deeply rooted than a little bit of assistance coming from China.
When you say those issues are deeply rooted, we know that there is the scourge of corruption. We know also that when it comes to human capital or expertise, that's another area that has been of major concern. In fact, at one point, I remember distinctly that we were hoping to bring in some experts, I think either from Italy or somewhere, where they were going to help with the aging power stations. When you speak about those, what are key areas of concern for you?
Okay, so the aging power stations is certainly something that needs to be addressed. But fixing those power stations is, firstly, it's a monumental task and it's a long-term program. What we need to do right now is speed up the process for embedded generation, for decentralized generation, and for private sector generation. And that will help bring new solutions to the table, not just fixing the old power stations that created this problem in the first case. And of course, what underlies the problem is the fact that we have an aging power station fleet, the fact that we've been behind on maintenance, as everybody knows, and of course there's been a lot of corruption. So those issues need to be addressed, but the solution lies in new generation capacity, speeding up that new generation capacity as much as possible, removing the administrative hiccups that exist with regard to bringing this new generation capacity on stream. So that is the fundamental issue that the country needs to address. to government's credit, it has relaxed a lot of the regulations and allowed private sector generation. So right now we have, and this is a strange thing to say, but we probably have one of the most progressive regimes in terms of electricity supply from the private sector.
Yeah.
And we need to exploit that as much as possible. The problem, of course, is the red tape within Eskom. So the moment we need to build these large plants that will wheel power from one part of the country to another, Eskom gets involved, and then, process grinds to a halt.
Yeah.
So that is one of the issues that needs to be addressed very urgently.
And I'm glad you've touched on the area of new generation capacity. But where my mind is, Mr. Madhi, is on renewables. And you use the word progressive. How progressive is China when it comes to renewable technology, particularly given that there is going to be information sharing on the technological aspect?
So China's value lies in the fact that they are one of the cheapest equipment manufacturers in the world for solar panels and for battery energy storage solutions. Also, China has a great deal of expertise when it comes to hydropower. They've built some of the largest hydropower schemes in the world has ever seen. So there's certainly a lot of expertise that sits within China in these areas. And that is something that we need to capitalize on, something that we need to exploit. Solar panels and the research behind solar panels, it's not really going to assist us too much to get involved in the research aspect of solar panels. They're a commoditized piece of equipment. And what we need to do is ensure that we have good supply chain capabilities from China, and we have good pricing and a good relationship and preferential relationship with regard to the equipment imported. Other areas like hydro and, of course, battery energy storage, there's a huge amount of opportunity where the two countries can work together, where we can develop manufacturing capability locally, where we can exploit the fact that we have some of the natural minerals that are required in batteries. And, we're one of the few countries that are so well endowed with this. This is an area that should be a focus for us. So that certainly is an area that we will, or we need to exploit in this relationship with China.
Yeah.
When it comes to nuclear power, however, many have cited the fact that, China has got nuclear capability and perhaps they can assist with Coburg. Those are two completely different kinds of nuclear technologies. The nuclear technology that we have at Coburg and the generation of plants that we have at Coburg is very different from what China, the Chinese expertise is and from what China has built. So we need to be very selective and very careful about where and how we interact with China.
Final question to you, sir. The relationship between South Africa and China, of course, at the moment we have China giving and giving and giving. But at some point, South Africa is going to have to reciprocate. And that's where the worry comes in, because the emphasis at that conference was that, particularly from emerging countries or developing countries, there needs to be a relationship where we are now producing much more finished goods as opposed to raw material. And we know that China at the moment is extracting a lot of that raw material. What do you think South Africa can potentially give to China reciprocally?
That's a great question, but I think let's also just put that in perspective. It's something the West has been doing for a long period of time anyhow. And what we need to do as a country is be able to, build up certain sectors of the economy where we have a structural advantage and make sure that we don't only export raw materials. Battery energy storage is one example where we could have a structural advantage. And there are other areas. Electric vehicles, interestingly enough, may be an area that we have a structural advantage. So it is important and incumbent upon government and industry leaders to identify and define those areas where we have a structural or strategic advantage and then become globally competitive in those particular areas. On the other hand, when it comes to understanding, what is being given in return for the cooperation with China, we need full transparency. We need to be very clear that everything is above board. and everything is in the interests of the average South African. This is absolutely vital.
Mohamed Madhi, thank you very much for your analysis of this situation. He is an energy expert, giving us his reading of China's help that has come the way of South Africa with our energy crisis.